it's all seen with this one big blanket. Like, I'm in tech. So if I know how to write React, I'm good in this big tech world. You're not. You still need to actually figure out the path.
We want to just work with the hungry ones only. We want to work with just the passionate kids only.
So a lot of what I'm really good at is like what the job title would be, conversion rate optimization specialist. That's like the job title that a corporate would give me, right? I can come in and kind of look at the tech, look at the data, and with my business background, with the technical background, be like, fix that, let's change this, let's test this, let's run this.
What do you think the impact of AI will be on software developers? Welcome, guys, back to another episode of the Truth Talk podcast, where we profile extremely inspirational figures in the tech and the business landscape. This episode is brought to you by the best school in the world, Melsoft Academy. And today we're joined by an incredible guest, Mr. Curtis Young from FIXXR. Welcome, Curtis.
No, thank you for having me. Excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise. So we met at the Civitas group, the Civitas network, and I did some background research on you before I reached out. Your profile is quite impressive, I must say. So I want you to talk us through your journey from university and how you studied something that's completely non-technical and you now transitioned to being a founder of a successful tech startup.
Look, so I think the one liner is it was by chance, a lot of these things. It was a little bit of serendipity. So I'm originally from the Eastern Cape, grew up on the farm. My dad was a farmer through and through. Like he only did grade 10, so standard 8, and then he went into farming full time. So for me, I saw what that did to him. Like, farming's not an easy thing to do in this country. So at the time for university, I was like, look, let me see what I can pick that'll give me the best chance of making money and, establishing like some kind of stability for me and my future family. So I chose to go and study BCom, accounting and economics. I did a double major. But even in university, I was already involved in a lot of different things to ensure that I can make sure that I stay in university. So in university, I was on NSFAS. My parents really didn't have any funds at the time, so I applied for NSFAS, was fortunate enough to get NSFAS. And my parents literally just rocked up at university, dropped me off at res, and was like, good luck, you're okay. You're an adult now. So I got involved with a lot of stuff there. I was like running the tuck shop. I was doing mentoring. I was like a student assistant, anything that had any type of, we will pay you to do X.
Okay.
Curtis was there. So I think the entrepreneurial aspect of me started quite young, but it started out of necessity, I think. And I think that's probably something that is true for a lot of people in South Africa. Out of university, I applied for different graduate programs. I applied for 2011 going into 2012. So I started my corporate career in 2012. So out of university, I applied for different graduate programs. I was fortunate enough to be shortlisted and then make it into the Standard Bank graduate program at the time. Because of what I studied, I was brought in as a financial kind of analyst for one of the projects at the bank. So I started off in finance, actually. I really got bored of that work very quickly. Not because the work was bad or I was working with anyone that I didn't enjoy working with. It's just, for me, what resonates with me as a person is doing work that's valuable, like creating stuff. And I found myself checking the homework of everyone else who's creating stuff. And that frustrated me a little bit. And that probably started my journey to transitioning into where I am now in the tech space, in the marketing space, in the data space and the likes. Because at the time, 2 guys who were on the graduate program with me, they were on the IT graduate program. So they were hardcore devs. These guys are like, dark room, I want to write code, let's go.
And do you think with those type of hardcore guys, do you think it's something you can learn, or you just born with it?
I think you can definitely learn tech and learn how to either engage with technical people really well or even learn tech. But there are just certain people who are born differently who enjoy the deep side of tech, right? Like there's the I'm going to just sit and code and that's what excites me. And then there's people who can code and they enjoy the creation process of what coding allows you to do. And they can both still be technical. They're just very technical. They're different technical people and they get excited by different things. So I think it is something you can learn, but it takes a certain type of person who's going to build the next Google, the next ChatGPT, the next Uber, etc., at the technical level. You might be technical enough to know how to manage the developers. You can write some of the code, maybe the front end bit, etc. But those really, really like the deep tech is stuff where I think that's something where you, to a degree, you're born with it, because I think it's one of those where the different people draw energy from different types of work. And certain people can do tech, but it doesn't energize them. And then there's people who are just energized by that. And I think it's okay to be either side of that equation. You just need to know what that looks like.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys, even me, that they like coding. That we can. Here's a project to build a website. Okay, fine, we can do it. But you're not that passionate about it. I don't wake up dreaming in code saying I need to go and write stuff. And I think also people should own it, to be like, nah, this thing is not for me.
And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be a hardcore developer. You don't need to be a front end guy, a back end guy, a data guy, etc. But you can actually still be in the tech space. There's plenty of ways you can be in the space without being the guy who writes the code.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Please
Yeah.
go
So,
on.
anyways, so at the time, like I said, I had two friends. We were just, complaining about work at a braai, which is how most ventures probably start. And we just got to talking and decided, look, let's try and do something together. At the time, we decided, look, a nice way to start seeing if we can establish ourselves outside of corporate was to start a digital consulting company. So I was meant to be the business development guy, like the Accenture guy. I'll sell all the stuff, and then the other two guys were meant to build all the stuff. So we started that venture in 2015 while we were still all working full time. Double hatted that until about 2016, and then went in full time, but took a pay cut and took probably a lot of, in hindsight, really bad decisions, but risky decisions for something that I felt was worth the shot.
Yeah.
It didn't pan out that well, though. Startups and building stuff from scratch in this country, and just I think in general, is really, really difficult. So we started off, building websites, hosting people's sites, setting up social media campaigns, Google ads, doing SEO and figuring out how to get people to rank on Google. If it was in the digital space, we were like, yeah, we can do it if you pay us.
Yeah.
So we landed a few clients that were big enough to justify us saying, let's give this a full-time shot. But it just didn't pan out how we thought it was going to pan out. I think partly not because any of the three of us were not talented or not good friends or not solid business partners, but I think it was a misalignment around how we saw the business growing and what direction that needed to look like. And there was just a little bit of misalignment at a value level that led us to start clashing in the work. And that clashing in the work meant that we started, missing deadlines here or there. And it ended up getting to a point where, yes, we had clients, yes, we were making some money, but things were tight. And the other two business partners at the time, because of them being more technical, they could get contracting work quite quickly. So like 1 week, things are tough. Key clients dropped us. Next week they're coming in saying, Curtis, good luck.
I
We've
got
got
a
contracting
job.
gigs. Hope you'll be okay. So that was a really tough time for me at the time. At that time, myself and my wife were pregnant with our first kid. He'd just been born, and there was like no money. So I joke now. I'm like, I know what debt collection processes look like in this country. I know how long you have before the bank starts saying we're going to repossess and before you need to make payments and the likes. But yeah, really tough time for me. Through that is actually where FIXXR was born.
Oh.
Because at that time I was driving a Renault Clio. It had just gone out of warranty. Obviously, because of everything else that was going on at the time, didn't have money to fix the vehicle. Car broke down. I still remember it was on the Marlborough on ramp going onto the M1. Car broke down. I had to get it towed home. Went to Renault saying, guys, this car's broken. Can you fix it? And they were like, yeah, for 40, 50 grand. I'm like, it's 100 kilometers out of warranty. I don't have 40, 50 grand. I still probably owe 60,000 on the car. Doesn't make sense to sink this much money into fixing it. And I then went down the rabbit hole of, I love four ways. Hey guys, does anyone know a mechanic? And just found that process very frustrating. And that's where the idea for FIXXR was born. But yeah, started Fixa at that time because of it's a startup on a startup now. So I was doing 2 startups at the same time, none of which yet were making sufficient money. Then started looking for contracting work as a data analyst because my background, because of the accounting, because I'd now needed to learn tech. I've learned how to code through the years of doing the digital consulting company. I landed a data analyst contracting gig for 6 months to at least tide me over. And that turned out into a full-time job for the place I was contracting. So I was then double hatting again, running FIXXR on weekends and at night, and then running, doing my day job of being a digital analytics person. And then from there, last year, decided to go back into FIXXR full-time. So that's kind of the career journey. So it's been in and out of corporate, in and out of startups. Tech has been something I've probably learned by chance a little bit, but it's probably been tech less from a hardcore tech perspective and more from a how to deploy tech in a functional way. And more particularly in the last few years for me has been marketing technology. So, collecting data, how to leverage that data to do cool and creepy stuff. That's kind of been my focus.
Interesting. It's always the businesses that were born out of adversity that end up making it the most.
Yeah.
And I completely relate. We had John Kitenge also on the show about a few weeks ago, and he started his business in the exact same manner where he had a partner that they were doing software development agency stuff together. And because things were tight, the partner who was more technical was easily just absorbed into into a 9 to 5. And then he was alone. And then he started his business, and now it's booming. So I see the exact same path for you.
And you know what? It's easy in those times and to feel like the people that are leaving you are the bad people, but they're not. So like the guys that I was there in business with, like I still play golf with them, I'll still drink beers with them and the likes. I think you can do everything right and things can still fail.
Yeah.
Like you can do everything the right way and things can still fail. And it doesn't make anyone a bad person. At the end of the day, each person needs to just make the choice that they feel is best for their family, for themselves, etc. And sometimes that just means, going to go on contract, going to go and get a job, going to hustle to, make things survive, right? So I think that story I tell it more because that was really tough learning for me as an individual, as opposed to it being this like nefarious, like, these guys are the assholes and whatever, right? I think a lot of the learnings that I took from that venture came into FIXXR, but there's still a lot of learnings that have come even just from running FIXXR as well. So
And whilst we're on the topic of co-founders, how did you meet your FIXXR co-founder? Do you have a FIXXR
Yeah, so
co-founder?
I've got two other founders, Bayo Bulela, but D for short, and then Mawetu. So I actually met Mawetu and D in university. So we know each other from university days. Um, I knew what I was looking for in business partners, having come out of a very traumatic experience with previous business partners. So I was quite deliberate in the conversations that I had with them initially. So the idea was still very, very fresh for FIXXR. I'd kind of hacked together an MVP website over a weekend, which is like basic site with a form where you'd fill it out and like we'd pretend to be getting you a quote and the likes. Meanwhile, it's Curtis running to a parts place quickly to get parts pricing. But we started off very small. I basically went to them and said, guys, here's this idea. I know you guys are good in your different fields. So D's got a background in operations. So he worked at Bolt. He worked in the ED space. Mawetu's got a background in also in the ED space, but more from a product and kind of growth perspective. So I knew what I was looking for to kind of complement my skill set and where we could kind of riff really well together. It started off with us just saying, look, there's this idea. I'm not going to just give shares away here for free, and I'm not going to pay for free. But I think I would want to see if we can work together, and let's see what that looks like. So we did that for maybe 6 months, like just, meeting up on weekends, working together, trying to see if we can establish a good working relationship first. And then we formalize that into the company that's FIXXR, with us having the shares get split out and the likes and all having an actual piece of the thing that we're building. But yeah, it was a very, I think, deliberate process where for me, key things that I learned in the first business that I took into FIXXR was it's really important when picking business partners to understand your business partner in work and outside of work. Because when they're working, they aren't just working because they're working to fulfill something else that's outside of the startup that exists, right? So they're working to get married, they're working to have kids, they're working to build cool tech, they're working to make lots of money so that they can retire, etc. And I think a key thing that happened in our conversations of establishing the partnership was us being very clear around having those chats, not just are you good at this job and you will be the growth guy or the ops guy or the tech guy, but really saying like when you're doing that and you make a choice to say, sorry guys, I'm not available this weekend because now I need to spend time with my girlfriend who I want to make my wife in the long term. I don't understand that. I can start feeling some kind of way as Curtis going, Larreth's not there on the weekend and I'm working. So it was really important for me to, and for us actually, to have those conversations so that you understand why people are doing what they're doing out in the work, because it's like the outside work also impacts that. So those things I think put us on a really solid footing as business partners where it's not Curtis on my way to our D, we're actually building something together so that we can fulfill something together outside. And we're collectively making those trade-offs as we go. I think that understanding really, really helped because it's far less emotional than when you're having the discussion around why am I working every weekend and you aren't?
Yeah.
Why are you always the guy who needs to go and present and I'm not, et cetera, et cetera. Like those kinds of conversations can very quickly devolve into a feeling conversation. Whereas if you understand why people are making the decision they make, it's a lot easier to kind of just look at it from a more rational, calm perspective. Yeah.
For those that don't know FIXXR, what do you guys do?
So the easy one line is we fix cars. So what we've built over the last couple of years is a managed marketplace where for you as a car owner, we help you have all the stress and hassle of fixing your car get removed with us taking that onto ourselves. So we help connect you to a mechanic. We help quote on the services or diagnostics that you need dealt on your vehicle. We help you figure out what those even are. And then we pair you with a really great experienced mobile mechanic who'd come through to your home or office to service the vehicle. On the mechanic side, there's also a value proposition that we're quite passionate about as well, where there's lots of great mechanics in this country, but you don't know them as Larreth, as a car owner. And they are really good at fixing cars, but they're not really good at all the other things that maybe are required to fix cars when you're doing it on your own. So when they're working at VW, when they're working at BMW, when they're working at Car Service City, etc., they are the guy who fixes the car. They aren't the guy who needs to invoice. They aren't the guy who needs to find the leads and quote and. There's a lot of support structures that are put in place around them to allow them to be the best version of mechanic that they can be. And for FIXXR, we've tried to build that as well for our mechanics. So our thing is we'll deal the quoting, we'll deal the chasing clients, engaging with clients, following up for payments. We'll find you the parts, we'll do the logistics. Your job is to be the best version of the mechanic you can be. It is a little bit different for them though, because now they need to fix a car in front of the client. So it's like the analogy I usually use is this is like a chef who's never had to cook in front of someone. Now he's needing to cook while you're watching him cook.
Yeah.
So there's a different way they need to engage, and we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we support our mechanics to do that in the best possible way.
That's a very interesting idea, because cars break down all the time.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that you want when your car breaks down is to start looking for a mechanic. Sometimes there are sayings about mechanics, you know, those jokes about mechanics,
Yeah.
about can you really trust a mechanic?
Yeah.
Because the client is blank. They don't know anything about cars. Their car just broke down. They don't know anything. So how do you vet the quality of the mechanic?
So there's a few things we do. So I think the vetting starts right from onboarding. So we do all the normal background checks, make sure you aren't a criminal and, you've got your qualifications. We get references from the current mechanics clients, and we'll call those references to see what type of engagement the clients had with the mechanic. So we do all the normal onboarding checks you'd expect. What we do, however, though, is then once you're onboarded onto the platform, we start you off on smaller jobs. Typically, Larreth car's not starting. Can you go and diagnose this? So we start them on not lower value, but lower risk jobs for client and for mechanic to get them comfortable with what it means to work the FIXXR way. Because we do have a slightly different way where it's not just about fixing the car, it's about trying to make sure that in fixing the car, you can add a level of credibility and trust to the process by spending time with making Larreth feel like he doesn't have a complete blank understanding of cars by the time our mechanics leave. So that starts with, like I said, the onboarding. We then vet the mechanics. We start them off on smaller jobs. We have two then tiers of ratings that we run at FIXXR. The first is a purely internal set of ratings. So every job, whether the client rates the mechanic or not, we've got a few things we're looking out for that are leading indicators for this guy being a really good mechanic or a mechanic that's going to start frustrating the clients in the longer term. So we rate them on those, and they need to maintain a certain level of internal rating. And then there's also the external rating, like normal Google reviews, website reviews, etc., where clients will review the mechanic directly on the profile. That's the second thing that we look at. So those three things together become the things we're continuously looking at to not only onboard good mechanics, but maintain that quality as they kind of continue working in FIXXR. Yeah.
Do you have horror stories of bad mechanics that jumped onto the platform and did something crazy at a client?
It's not hectic horror stories, but it's stuff where it's like we just sit there internally and we're like, my guy. Right? So we've had guys like rock up with their own clients' cars at our client's job, and their client was like a policeman. So our mechanics rocking up in like a police vehicle. It's like, why? But generally speaking, we try and go with mechanics who are already good at what they do and make sure that we support them in being the best version of that. So we like these guys know how to fix cars. That's not what we need to train them on. What we spend time on is training them on the softer stuff. Like, what does a 5-star FIXXR mechanic look like? Like, greet. Here's your kit. You need to be kitted out so that you look like a FIXXR mechanic. You need to have your stamps in place so that if you're doing a service, you stamp the book, etc. We've got our app that they need to fill out, etc. So we spend a lot of time trying to coach them on the softer side of things to avoid those horror stories. What I would say though, and it's an interesting dynamic in this industry, is the best mechanic can still mess up. Things go wrong. Like, particularly if this isn't just us coming to do a clear, I'm doing your brake pads, I'm doing your battery, I'm doing X. If you're a car owner who has a problem, like my car's not starting, there's 10 different things that could be the solution there. Our mechanics go out and do an initial check, yes, to kind of figure out which of these 10 things are the most likely. But it doesn't mean that that's the only thing. So what we often find frustrating on both sides is our mechanics will be, but I recommended the most likely thing. We fixed it and there's still a problem.
Yeah.
That's the process. That's what our mechanics think. And you as a client think, but I just paid you $1,000. I just paid you $2,000. I thought this was going to solve my problem. It's not. Now it's a next thing, a next thing, a next thing. And we need to spend a lot of time just trying to maintain that level of trust between both parties. I find it really interesting in this industry because I equate a mechanic is very similar to a doctor. You know, you go to a GP and a doctor will be like, listen, you've got a cough. He has antibiotics, he has cough syrup. If it's not better, come back in a week. And a patient has no issue with coming back if they're still on better. But a patient, like a car coming back a second time, is viewed with like, oh, you didn't do the work properly.
Yeah.
I find it's a very interesting dynamic. And there's probably a lot of behavioral science and kind of psychology that's at play there, because a doctor's in his nice, you know, room, he's dressed well, he's got all the textbooks there, like that industry is set up to almost build trust.
Yeah.
Mechanics are dirty, oily guys, like they're sitting with their torn pants because they were just working on a car. And I think there's an element there where part of that trust is coming just because of a perception of, can I trust this guy because he just looks like he's just, like
Yeah.
fix this one car and that's all he knows how to do, right?
And then also on that, I've heard a few stories about the motor industry in general, that it's mafia ran, it's gangs, because you've got the taxi guys that are in the same space, you've got the VW guys, then you've got obviously the high rate of hijacking of cars. Do you ever go under any sort of danger with your line of work?
No, I think we've steered, like we've been deliberate in maybe choosing the type of clients we are going after. I think in certain spaces that might be true, but I can't speak to that at all. We haven't gone into those spaces, and I think it's been by conscious choice. What I would also say is what we've been always balancing at FIXXR is you'll get a client who maybe tries to book from Hillbrow. So as much as what we need to protect you as the client, we also need to protect our mechanics. And all the vetting processes that we do with the mechanics to make sure, we aren't letting someone come to your home or workplace who's maybe not going to be there with the best intentions. That's us managing it for you as the client. But in the same breath, we try and manage that for our mechanics as well. So we'd have mechanics who come to us and say, look here, Curtis, I get that there's this booking in this place, but that's not a safe area for me to travel to. Can we reschedule or rearrange a different address? So I think safety is definitely a big thing for us. So we're quite deliberate around what mechanics we bring onto the platform, where we send those mechanics, because there's danger, like Uber drivers, Bolt drivers get called in and they get hijacked and robbed in certain areas, right? So we also play that role for our mechanics as well. And we've also tried to make sure that we establish relationships in the industry, especially in terms of sourcing parts, with your bigger providers, your Goldwagens, your Midas, your AutoZones, where we don't come to FIXXR if you're expecting the cheapest version of the part and the cheapest labor. That's not the market we're playing in. So we've tried to be quite clear around what market we're playing in and then built our business around that. So we've been fortunate enough not to maybe be exposed to, I think, the more predatory aspects of the industry. Yeah, and I think it's also helped us maybe not being from the industry. So myself, my way to ND aren't from the automotive industry, so we maybe weren't naturally sucked into that darker side of it. But like I said earlier, there are so many good mechanics. There are so many really great part suppliers, really great panel beaters, auto electricians, etc. They're in the country. Like I'd probably say that's the majority, and they are doing they are hustling just as much to build a successful business as the spaza shop owner or the taxi driver or the CEO in a big corporate.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting industry. I'm sure if we speak on this industry, would need 3-4 hours just going
Yeah, yeah.
in depth. So let's go back to tech,
Cool.
right? So as someone who is a founder, you are in a position of hiring tech talent, retaining as well as upskilling this tech talent. And you did hire a couple of Microsoft Academy graduates. I think that's Coley and Akona,
Yeah,
right?
that's correct.
What do you typically look for in junior talent before they come onto the team?
Look, so I think the first thing here is evidence of what you have put on your CV. So what I find is quite often a lot of junior, especially in the tech space, interns don't spend enough time expanding on when they say they can write JavaScript, when they say they can, code in React, etc. They don't have any tangible thing that they can practically point out to say, here's the example of where I've done it and where I've done it successfully. So I think for me, when looking for like more junior intern type talent, the first thing I typically would look for is, can you showcase and speak to and show evidence of what you've put on your CV, right? I think the second thing that I would typically look for is an understanding, maybe not initially, but especially within the first 3 months of any internship, an understanding of where they see themselves growing from where they are to where they see themselves needing to kind of work towards 5 years from now, 3 years from now. They need to start getting that sense within the first 3 months. I don't have a massive amount. I tell Corley and Akona this. I'm like, guys, I expect you to mess up. I expect you to do a crappier version of a website, a crappier version of a process flow, a crappier version of a solution design document, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever that is. I expect it to be crappier than what it is if I do it. And I think what I look for in that is guys who are okay to fail, but guys who are hungry to learn and who are pushing themselves to learn without Curtis needing to come in and be like, this isn't good. Now I must force you to go and find a training course, make it better, etc. So I think those would probably be the three things that I look out for, but I don't necessarily look for the best coder or the best, you know, like techie per
Yeah.
se. I think
Are there other
it
are there other
helps.
like soft skills that you look at?
Yeah. So the soft skills, like I said, I think hunger to learn and comfort with failing. So for me, what I would typically look out for is like, tell me how, like, you've gone through Melsoft, you need to do projects. So you can show me that you've written code, but talk me through your process of how you didn't just follow the step by step thing. Because I think a person who's really interested in getting into tech is not just going to do the coursework. They're going to typically try and take the coursework and apply it outside of the course with their own pet project, their own thing. So have they tried to say, I've built a website now, I'm going to all of a sudden start a web design company and do this for friends? Have they taken the knowledge and actually actively tried to apply it? If they haven't, that's typically a red flag for me, because if they've just gone through Microsoft Academy, they can just talk to the portfolio projects and that's great. They've done what they've been told. They haven't yet figured out how, if they're passionate or not about this, is typically what I found, right? They've taken an opportunity and they've done well with it, but it might not be their longer term passion. And typically passion comes out where you don't need to ask, it happens. Like if I'm passionate about data, I'm not going to be asked to build a report or analyze stuff. I'm just going to sit and do it. If I'm passionate about front end dev, I'm not going to need to be told to go and look at a website and figure out how I can come up with ideas to make it better. I'm going to do it because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a critical thing for junior guys to bring to the table. What I would say, though, in defense of junior guys who aren't doing that, that quite often comes from a place of they just don't know yet where they want to end up. Because everyone says like get into tech, like there's money there, it's easy to find a job, etc. But like back end versus front end, being the API guy, being a person who specializes in setting up CRMs from a technical perspective, being a MarTech person who just focuses on the technical side of marketing tools and data collection, etc., data science, AI, like, there's so many different aspects to tech. And that's just if you are sitting a bum on seat writing code in different elements, right? And then you still have all the other, you in tech, but you aren't tech. Like you aren't the developer, but you the tester. You the quality assurance guy. Like you the guy you the business analyst. You the project manager or the product manager, etc. There's so many different opportunities in tech that are tech and are not tech. And I think for juniors, a lot of the time, it's all seen with this one big blanket. Like I'm in tech. So if I know how to write React, I'm good in this big tech world. You're not. You still need to actually figure out the path you want to go down. Because if you want to go down and become a marketing technology expert, right? Or a machine learning expert, or the guy for AI, or a front end guy, or the back end guy, the skill sets you're going to learn, both soft and hard, are very different. And if you look at most university training, most TVET, most like academies like Melsoft and the likes, it's probably more geared towards front end with a little mix of back end in it. And that's kind of what the pitch is. That's the core that everyone learns. But there's so much more. There's so many different other paths that you can go down that are broader than that. And I think a lot of the junior guys struggle to walk that path because you maybe feel like, okay, cool, I've done this, but now that's interesting and that's interesting and that's interesting. And they need to figure out how to not chase everything that's shiny.
True.
And commit to what they feel they can do well for long enough for them to become the guy for it.
Yeah.
So like what I've told Collier and Akone in FIXXR as an example is like, guys, like, tell me what you want to work on. I don't have an issue. There's enough work to go around here. But when you tell me that, be clear around why you're telling me that, because the long-term thing is you need to then see this as the path to becoming the guy. Like that's your goal, right? Like the path to go from junior intern into junior dev into kind of mid-level dev, etc., is eventually you must be the guy that owns something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really agree with what you're saying when it comes to being passionate about it, because I mean we encounter students all the time, right? We're around students that there are those that really want it, those that did their research before, or maybe they even did some online courses before they come to us, right? Then there are those that were told by their parents that go into tech, there's money there.
Yeah.
They are kind of forced into it. And it's always these ones, the hungry ones. And then the most frustrating thing for our business at the moment is that we want to just work with the hungry ones only. We want to work with just the passionate kids only. But then these not so hungry ones are the ones that pay the bills.
Yeah.
So then how do you manage that? That's a little issue that we're facing. How do we get to the point where we are only working with the kids that really want to be here, that we know once they're done, they're going to go out there and smash it, but also be able to keep the startup afloat?
Look, so I think I'll speak maybe from a FIXXR perspective. I think the first thing I'd note here is hire slow, fire fast. If it's not working, it's okay. Like it doesn't make anyone a bad person. It doesn't make them less competent or anything like that. Sometimes it's just like, you start down a path and it's just not going to work out, and that's okay, right? So I think being deliberate around how you choose people is important. But I think that must also just be tempered with reality as well. So I wouldn't expect, if you're hiring a junior, to go and put them through like, interview process, then you do video recording, then case study, then. I think it's probably better to go and pick the best, quick, like semi quickly, but like balance that with making sure you're doing the right checks there. And then rather just be clear around, here's what you need to hit to stick around. And if you don't hit it, then it's okay. Cut the ties. Like, I think you don't need to be emotional about that. It's not a nice thing to do sometimes. I struggle with it personally. It's I don't like doing that. But I think it's definitely something where if you're hiring permanently, hire slow, fire fast. And if you bring in people on kind of contracting, temp, internship type basis, then bring in the people that will fit and have the right attitude, and then help them build the technical skill set. I think that second bit needs to then come with you as the person making that choice of bringing in people with the right attitude, but there's maybe gaps on the technical side. You need to make sure that you're putting in place the right support structures to help them grow and build what they need to build to apply that good attitude in the right way by executing when they learn the technical skills. What I do also see, though, especially for people who are earlier on in their career, the technical stuff, like, how to do it, to treat it like a school project. Like, if there's a YouTube video there, you can follow along and you'll build the thing. But you actually haven't yet gotten to the point where you fully understand how to take the knowledge and apply it practically. And there's a lot of softer stuff and non-tech skills that come into play there, but that are really helpful if you have them in a tech world, like design. Like, you don't need to be a designer to be a good dev in a corporate, because you are hired to just write the code and you get given the design.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to be the best project manager or kind of product manager who thinks up what needs to be built in a big corporate. When you're a dev, you just get told build X, and you have almost very little say in what that looks like outside of the technical construct of this, right? And I think especially for people starting out in the tech space, I think it's so valuable to learn these other supporting skills. Like, learn what building a good product looks like and what it means. What are the processes? What are the steps that you typically be expected to follow? What does good design look like? What does working with data look like? What does managing products delivery look like? Like, those skill sets, I think, are so valuable to add to your technical knowledge.
True.
Because then what you're ending up with is someone who's applying the technical knowledge deliberately. What I find with a lot of juniors when you work with them is they maybe have the knowledge, but they need to be told how to apply it. And they need to be told to the nth level of degree, like, this button must go there. This thing must do this when it gets clicked, etc. And to grow quickly from a junior or from an intern into a junior, etc., if you can start building the skill sets to almost self do that, like, I can figure out where the best place is to put the button. I can figure out a rough high level mock-up myself. I can figure out how to stitch the data together myself with the tech that's in play here, etc. Those extra skills that, if you have them, you apply tech deliberately, are so helpful. They'll make you grow as a technical person a lot quicker than if you just focus on writing the cleanest version of code.
So it's that saying again that you want to be like a T-shaped person who maybe you have one core skill that you're really good at, but you also have other complementary skills that go along with your core skill,
Yeah.
then you become unstoppable.
And the reality is, for an intern new in the space, they neither. They're not
That's
the top
so
of the
true.
T, and they're not the bottom of the T. They're at the start of where those two places join, where they haven't yet gone deep on any tech and they haven't yet got broad on anything else. And I think for me, what I would typically give as advice is, given where you are when you're there, it's okay to think you're going to go deep, or it's okay to think your preference is to go wide. It's okay if that's all you do. You don't eventually even need to become the T guy in a tech world. You can just be the guy who now knows how to do a lot of different stuff, because that would still be valuable in startups, in corporates, but you maybe are then working more in the product space or the management of technical guy space, right? And there's still opportunities there. There's still money there. There's still fantastic career progression that you can have when you are there. And if you're going deep, then like my thing that I typically get frustrated with the most is like, then go deep, man. Like, don't pussyfoot around it. Don't still tell me about you are watching YouTube videos and like that's it, right? Like, going deep means you really need to get into the teeth of things. And to do that, you often need to break stuff. You need to fail. You need to come up with your own product idea, try and build it, and then realize, oh shit, I have no idea actually how to even deploy this thing. Like, it's fine, right? But going deep really is something where it's failure to failure, learning to learning, and you eventually start becoming comfortable with just very quickly knowing how you need to operate to showcase your kind of deep knowledge and what that looks like. It doesn't need to be the same thing for everyone.
Interesting.
But at that T, I think like guys must just make their choice. They all come in thinking, I'm going to be the next dev.
Yeah.
And if you and I, Larreth, had to go and check 5 years from now and say, Kolia, Kona, and everyone else who's gone through an academy or some kind of training, etc., are they still devs in the traditional sense? Like, is that their job title? You'd probably find that for the majority, it's not.
That's so true.
And I think the biggest thing that, like, one of the biggest things guys must get over is being okay with that being okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes, you're right. Many people. I think also it's a lack of knowledge with these students, with the students, right? They come in and then they say, okay, I'm learning to be a developer. So in 5 years, I want to be a senior developer. They don't realize when they're just starting that there is so much more than just being a dev.
and they don't even also realize what that means when they say they're a senior dev. Like I said, not everyone enjoys sitting and writing code. Not everyone enjoys, like, if you're a senior dev, you probably as well, maybe in a small company, you'd write more code. But in bigger corporates, when you're going senior dev, you're writing less and less code now. And you actually now reviewing a lot more code and you managing a lot more. You're starting to become a manager more than what you are a person who's writing lots of code. So I think this is that normal thing of, in every career, these mistakes are made. They aren't like unique to the tech space, because like the normal thing would be study a BCom, then go and become a CA, then make lots of money. We think of careers when we are younger as these linear things of, I'm going to do X and then become Y. And they're not actually. They are far more like, try this, fail, I enjoy this. And then you kind of are building your career by finding the things that you really, really enjoy. Like for me, like I said, and I've shared earlier, I studied accounting, but I don't kind of say I'm an accountant anymore.
Yeah.
I see myself more as a person who's able to take tech and data and combine that into valuable delivery. So like for me, so a lot of what I'm really good at is like, what the job title would be, conversion rate optimization specialist. That's like the job title that a corporate would give me, right? I can come in and kind of look at the tech, look at the data, and with my business background, with the technical background, be like, fix that, let's change this, let's test this, let's run this. and I'm
And
quite good at that,
that's a
right?
great skill.
So I'm good at that now, but 3 years ago, 5 years ago, that job title didn't even exist. It didn't even exist, right? So I would have needed to become a marketing manager to maybe do some CRO on the marketing side, or I needed to become a data analyst to do some of the data stuff, or so like there's the breadth of careers that have kind of popped up. It's just it's changing all the time.
And do you think that's part of the journey that you took to become a founder, where you were kind of now forced to learn all these other skills?
Yeah. So I think the journey I took helped me become who I am today, and it's just by luck a little bit that it's something that I've now naturally gravitated towards and found a natural affinity for. I think that probably happens with so many people. It's like you end up in a space, and it's luck that it grows in a way where you enjoy. What I would say though is like my path of it happening via startup and then going into corporate and back into startup, that kind of ping ponging doesn't necessarily need to be for everyone as well, right? Because startups are glamorized to a degree, entrepreneurship's glamorized to a degree, and it's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's not easy at all, and you can still find that same place of value for yourself in corporate, working a job that you really love and enjoy. I think that's where the softer side of kind of being okay with walking your own journey and owning that fully comes into play, where make your mistakes as a young intern, like try 100 different things, but try it fully, man. Like again, what I tell Corley and Akona and other young guys that I kind of engage with is, if you are going to fail in a blazing ball of glory, like fail having fully
big.
tried. Like be smart around it. Don't just, do stupid things, but like fail knowing that you can look back on that and say, you know what, I like gave it my all, right? Because quite often people are in the space of, I'm trying, but you're still holding a little bit in reserve because you're scared. That fear's okay, but just go for it, clap it, man. As Akona would say.
Clap it.
Yeah, clap it. Yeah.
Cape Town.
Yeah.
Also friend.
Yeah.
Okay, so two last questions. What do you think the impact of AI will be on software developers?
Look, so I think we can all talk 5, 10, 100 years from now when Terminator happens and the likes. I think in the immediate short term, it's going to allow developers to be far more productive. So if you are good at being able to leverage AI, you are going to be able to supercharge your own growth, your own knowledge, your own learning, and look like an absolute rock star. So like I said, I'm like self-taught dev. I know enough to be able to kind of hack together stuff fairly quickly, but like I'm not going to go and say like hire me in Google and I'm going to go and rewrite the search algorithm. That's not me, right? But I know that I can still show up really knocking out things that are valuable for me and potentially valuable for clients and customers, etc. Far quicker with a smart way of using AI, right? So like Corley and Akona were up at our workshop in Honeydew, and like my business partner was like, Curtis, we have a real problem. Like we sometimes have mechanics who need to travel outside of our immediate operating areas, and we need to pay them travel fees. And we don't have an easy way of being able to understand, should we pay them, should we not pay them? So he posed the question, and I was like, cool, ChatGPT, here's my idea, here's what I need to do. And then back and forth in the afternoon came with an initial kind of application widget that we could throw back to the ops team to say, guys, put in the address, it'll spit out the mechanics and say whether travel fees need to be paid or not. Colin O'Connor were like, yo, that's just an afternoon. If I was doing that on my own as Curtis, it wouldn't have taken an afternoon, it would have taken a bit longer, because now, you need to write the base code to all the boring code to set up, etc. And now you can just be ChatGPT, give me base, go.
Boom.
And then you back and forthing it. So the way I kind of think of AI is it's a really smart intern. Like if you ask it the right questions, it can give you really great answers. So use it like that, like use it in that fashion. So I think AI in the short to medium term, definitely something that can make developers more productive.
Yeah.
The second thing I'd maybe note is we also need to find the AI that creates value for you. So there's everything has AI in it now, right? Everything's coming out with AI in it. And I think not all of that AI is intrinsically valuable. And I think some of it has just been repackaged as AI, but it's always actually been there. So AI is not a new thing. Like Google search has been using AI for yonks, right? Uber's been using AI or equivalents of AI for yonks to kind of pair you with the best driver, etc. So I think there is an element as well of just needing to see the proper valuable applications of AI and not just the optimization, fluffy, cool things of AI that kind of get bolted onto core products.
Cool. Interesting. Great answer. I love that answer. And then the last question, this question came from the last guest that we had was Sanjay Soni. What does success look like for you?
So I think a few things. One, I think doing work that I enjoy and feeling personally like the work that I'm doing is creating value. I think that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing that I'd say is my parents sacrificed a lot to afford me the opportunities to be where I am. They sacrificed a hell of a lot. Yeah. And I've got 2 kids and a wife. And I think what success would look like for me is to put my wife and my 2 kids in a position where they have flexibility to make mistakes that I maybe didn't feel like I could make when I was their age. Or that maybe my mom didn't feel like she could make when she was married to my dad and the likes. And I think my wife will maybe fight me on this and say, no, but Curtis, you work so hard. Like you say this, but then you don't spend quality time with me. But the things that drive me are those 2 things. I want to feel like I'm doing work that's valuable, and I want to feel like I'm doing work that allows me to have my kids be proud, have my wife be happy and proud, and to afford me the opportunity to put them in a space to make mistakes that I maybe didn't feel like I could make. Yeah.
And your question to the next guest?
Who is the next guest?
No,
Do we know yet?
not yet. Yeah.
What is one mistake that you've made that allowed you to learn the most?
Got it. Cool. Thank you so much, Curtis, for your time.
It's been a pleasure chatting.
Like the hour. The hour always goes by
always
so
flies
quickly.
by,
Yeah. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. I think Fixa is an amazing idea that can definitely change a lot of people's lives, make life a lot more convenient. I love what you guys are doing. And yeah, thank you for sharing your journey, for showing that you just need passion. You need to love what you're doing if you wanna succeed. You shouldn't just do something because someone told you and then you hope that you're gonna succeed. And that there's just so much into this thing called tech. It's not just coding.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank
you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed the chat.
All right, cool. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode. And always remember that the truth will set you free. Thank you, guys.